Okay. Good morning and welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's meeting on substantial remodel evictions. We will begin this meeting with a brief presentation and then we will open it up to public comments. We ask that those joining us on Zoom, please stay muted until it is your turn to make a public comment. Next slide, please. Over the last few months, community development staff has been working with ad hoc committee members, Mayor Primith and Councilmember Donovan, to develop proposed changes to the city's just cause for eviction ordinance. As directed by the City Council, we have focused specifically on substantial remodel evictions. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about substantial remodel provisions in the city's existing just cause ordinance, and then provide some background on our efforts to propose changes to this ordinance. I'll share what staff has been doing over the last few months and some of the input that we have heard from renters and property owners in South Pasadena. Next slide, please. The city's current just cause for eviction ordinance was adopted in January 2021. It is nearly the same as the State Tenant Protection Act of 2019, also referred to as AB 1482. Our ordinance provides specific reasons for which a property owner may evict a tenant. These reasons are broken down into at-fault just causes, such as non-payment of rent, and no-fault just causes. Under the current ordinance, an owner's intent to demolish or substantially remodel is a no-fault just cause for eviction. The ordinance's definition for substantially remodel is the same as AB 1482. However, South Pasadena's ordinance contains additional requirements beyond those in AB 1482. An owner cannot evict for a substantial remodel or demolition unless building permits are first obtained and included in the notice of termination that's provided to the tenant, in addition to a written explanation of the scope of work and why the work cannot be completed in 30 days and requires the tenant to vacate the property for 30 or more days. Next slide, please. At the City Council meeting on April 19th, 2023, renters and concerned community members made public comments to express their concerns about an owner's attempt to evict renters to substantially remodel the units. In response to these comments, the City Council directed staff to evaluate how the city's existing ordinance can be strengthened to address these substantial remodel eviction concerns. At the City Council meeting on May 17th, the City Council adopted a 45-day moratorium on no-fault just cause evictions to provide time for staff to further study substantial remodel evictions and to develop an ordinance that adequately addresses the issue. Next slide. After researching what other cities are doing and hosting 3 community outreach events, staff presented a proposed ordinance amending the city's just cause ordinance at the City Council meeting on June 13th. In this proposed ordinance, substantial remodel was no longer grounds for an eviction. Instead, an owner could undertake necessary and substantial repairs so long as they took certain mitigation measures. If these substantial and necessary repairs rendered a tenant's unit uninhabitable, the owner would be required to provide temporary relocation assistance to the tenant. Substantial and necessary repairs were defined to include substantial repairs that are necessary to the property and/or unit, or that are necessary to bring the property and/or unit into compliance with health and safety codes and laws, replacement or substantial modification of any system that requires a permit, and the abatement of hazardous materials, including lead-based paint, mold, or asbestos, in accordance with applicable federal, state, and local laws. At that meeting, the City Council said that they were not ready to vote on a proposed ordinance. Instead, they directed staff to carry out additional research and community outreach before coming back with a new proposed ordinance. At the City Council meeting on June 28th, the City Council extended the moratorium on no-fault just cause evictions to provide more time for staff to study the issue and to finalize a proposed ordinance to bring to the City Council before the moratorium expires on December 28th, 2023. Over the last few months, staff has conducted additional community outreach, research, and analysis. We received 92 responses to our survey for rental property owners and 183 responses to our survey for renters. We had individual staff meetings with 13 property owners and 23 renters. We hosted small focus groups for renters and property owners. And we are here at today's community meeting to hear more input from all of you. But before I turn it over to all of you for additional input, I want to share some of the key points we have heard from rental property owners and renters in the surveys, meetings, and focus groups over the last several weeks. We heard from all 13 property owners who met with staff that they typically wait for units to turn over to do a substantial remodel. In individual meetings in the focus group, property owners discussed being able to do certain substantial remodeling work with the tenant in place. Examples provided included replumbing, re-roofing, HVAC replacement, electrical panel replacement, and bathroom remodels. 3 property owners who met with staff generally supported removing substantial remodel as grounds for an eviction. 2 said, however, that a tenant should not be able to withhold rent in addition to receiving temporary relocation assistance. Most property owners reported in the survey, individual meetings, and the focus group that a temporary relocation requirement for substantial remodels would increase costs and prevent them from recouping those costs by raising rents, which are often below market to market rate. According to property owners, this in turn could deter owners from maintaining their properties and discourage new investment in South Pasadena. This could also put some landlords out of business. Property owners spoke about challenges associated with these increased costs, including increasing mandates from insurance companies to make certain upgrades and difficulty securing debt or equity to fund substantial remodels. Property owners also noted that they should not be responsible for temporary relocation when repairs or rehabilitation are due to emergencies that are beyond their control. And lastly, property owners of the focus group expressed support for a regular review process for the Just Cause ordinance to monitor and evaluate its impacts. Oh, okay, so can you go back a slide? So I hope that slide was just shown. And then next slide, please, thank you. Okay, so we have heard from a lot of renters who live in buildings with deferred maintenance, though many have said that the necessary repairs do not rise to the level of requiring a tenant to vacate. 10 out of the 23 renters who provided input in individual meetings said that their landlord does not do a good job of maintaining the property. Regardless of the conditions of their properties, 72% of the 177 survey question respondents stated that an owner should not be able to evict for substantial remodel. Many renters added comments to this effect in their responses to other survey questions as well. We heard in the individual meetings in the focus group that many renters are afraid that they will be evicted for a substantial remodel, especially if their buildings were recently sold or will soon be sold. In the renter survey, almost half of the 168 survey question respondents reported that they believe they are at risk of being evicted for a substantial remodel. Almost 87% of renters who met with staff expressed support for a tenant having an option to voluntarily terminate their tenancy due to a substantial remodel that requires the tenant to vacate the unit. At the same time, most renters in these meetings and in the focus group said that they would not choose to voluntarily terminate their tenancy, largely because they would have trouble affording other housing options in South Pasadena, or even just housing options, period. To that point, almost 70% of survey respondents reported that they would not be able to afford to move to a new unit in South Pasadena if they were forced to move out of their current unit, and almost a quarter of respondents were unsure if they'd be able to afford a new unit in South Pasadena. And finally, in their feedback about the ordinance proposed to the City Council in June, most renters who met with staff said that the temporary relocation assistance amount of 2 times the daily rental rate was insufficient, especially for those paying below market rents. Many spoke about the importance of staying in South Pasadena, where their children go to school and their community support system is, and about having the amenities and the space that they're used to, so that the temporary displacement period can be as minimally disruptive as possible. Next slide. So those are some of the key points that we've heard. Now we want to hear from you. We want to know if you have any additional input, if we've missed anything, if we've gotten anything wrong. I think we will limit comments for, I guess, starting out, just to see how this goes. We'll limit public comments to 3 minutes. We'll start with those who are here in council chambers. So if you're in council chambers and want to provide a comment, please come up to the podium one at a time. And then if you're on Zoom and would like to make a public comment, please use the raised hand function and wait until we call on you to unmute and speak. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Allison Becker, the Deputy Director for the Community Development Department. We kind of jumped right into the presentation, but I wanted to acknowledge the hard work of Leah Demarest, who's our Senior Planner for Housing Policy and Programs. And of course, Lily, who has been ably helping with slides and will also be managing the Zoom room. Before we get started, or as we are working through public comments, please feel free to get a bit of coffee or some water or a snack, because that's kind of how we like to set the stage for Saturday morning meetings. So welcome, thank you for coming. And anyone who'd like to share some thoughts, can please just come on up.
And just make sure that the microphone is on. You'll press this square button and there should be a red light.
Oh, got you. Okay, first time I've ever done this. Hi, my name is Richard Kinney. I live just up the street on Mound. Try to quickly get to a couple of things. We are facing in our building substantial remodel eviction threats, I would say. It hasn't actually happened yet, but there's been a lot of talk about it. For me, that would be my 3rd time I've gone through this in the last 6 years. And I understand, I used to be a homeowner. I understand you have to do work and repair. I've owned a business. I understand that you have to make money. So these are not things that I'm unwilling to listen to, but I've noticed one of the big changes that doesn't seem to come up in any of this. I've been in 3 apartments in the last 6 years. Each time I became a renter in the place, I personally met the landlord because they were the owners of the buildings and they went around and knew who the people were. What's happening is a lot of these people were baby boomers. They're retiring, they're cashing out. And what's happened is what's come into the market are real estate investment corporations who's have a different focus. They have to make profits for their investors. They don't have a real seat in the community other than maybe paying for some things while they're doing their business. But their general thing, their interest is outside of the community. And what's happening is you're pushing everybody out who's been here for a while in order to make that money. And I'm not sure I have an answer of how to do that. But each time, because I was a good renter, each time I was faced eviction, they said, you can come back after we've remodeled, which was true. But each time it was basically double of the rent of what I'd had before. And I can't do that jump again here. I'll have to leave the community. So that's something that I'm not sure that's come up, but I think it needs to be part of the equation.
Hi, my name is Michael Thurman, and I live down on Fletcher Avenue. Grew up in South Pasadena, raised by a family that were teachers here in South Pasadena and invested in South Pasadena properties. So I became a landlord's son right from the very beginning, worked on properties as I was growing up before going to school. We have a unit here. We have another unit somewhere else. My parents still manage their units. I'm kind of the flip side of what the gentleman who just spoke described, as far as we truly are local landlords. We've worked closely with our tenants when we've run into whether damages or repairs or whatever needs to be done to take care of the properties. We, of course, know the tenants, personally. They're friends of ours. And so it's really important that as we're looking at these issues, we recognize both of those problems, both of those issues, at least in terms of you've got some really great landlords in this town who really do care about their tenants and their properties. And you've got landlords that don't have the same relationship with the town, with the people, and, are much more corporate in their approach. And so trying to come up with solutions that work is really going to be the critical issue on this. One of the things that was really striking to me when I saw what the city had found from the separate discussions with the landlords and the tenants was they're pretty much saying the same things. The landlords are saying, we're not able to charge market rate in South Pasadena. The tenants are saying if we were forced to leave, we couldn't afford to pay current rates in South Pasadena. One of the issues that came up in the landlord discussion I was part of was the recognition that if you add additional costs to the landlord in the process of doing substantial renovations, you're either disincentivizing those renovations and making landlords less eager to perform those renovations, or you're almost mandating increased costs. You're mandating increased rent because, as the gentleman was saying, it's a business. You can't operate the business at a loss. You've got to pay the mortgage, you've got to pay the gardener, you've got to pay the water, whatever the different things that the landlord's responsible for. And so it's important to recognize that whatever ordinance we implement, it's going to, or at least if we change the cost structure for the landlords, meaning they need to add an additional cost of renovations, that cost will get passed through to tenants. So it's kind of like we all have the same gun aiming at us when we're looking at these issues. I haven't got a great answer. I haven't got a great answer for the mom and pop, issue that I raised first, and I don't have a great answer for the cost issue. I think it's just helpful if we all are kind of thinking about it from the same point of view, because it seems consistent. Thank you.
Does anybody in chambers wish to give another comment? Please step forward. Okay, if anybody on, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Good morning. This is Ann Begasow representing South Pasadena Tenants Union. We've been going over this for so very long, and given the results of the surveys, it seems like we have the situation is the same. Landlords don't want us to have any protections. Tenants need protections to be able to maintain their health and their housing in South Pasadena. We understand that there's costs related to maintaining your investment. But as we've said many times, and that we've heard from many people in our community for the last, 4 or 5 months, if you can't afford to maintain your investment, why are you still in it? And I keep hearing this thing about, oh, corporate landlords are going to be so bad. Well, guess what? Every time I get called about a ceiling falling in, or something going wrong, or the gas has been shut off and the landlord won't fix it, or they're trying to get us to pay for it, it's never been a corporate landlord. It's been a local mom and pop landlord. So I'm going to dispel that myth right now that somehow there's this difference between local landlords being better than corporate landlords. There are also corporate landlords who are very good because you know why? Their lawyers tell them you can't do this. And they don't continue to threaten their tenants with, well, I'm going to kick you out if you don't do this. And I don't have to do this. If you make me fix the roof, I'm going to be forced to evict you. They don't even bother to find out what the laws are. We had a situation where a ceiling came down during the hurricane. The woman was a mom and pop landlord. She had in her lease that she would prorate the rent should the unit become uninhabitable. There was asbestos abatement. There was no ceiling. During that time, the mom and pop landlord decided she was going to remodel the whole unit. I advised her that we were under a substantial rent eviction moratorium. And she said, well, I'm going to give my tenant 30 days because I decided to, instead of just fixing the ceiling and allowing my tenant to move back in, or even honoring the contract that I have with that tenant. So I'm getting really sick of hearing this argument that there's somehow some difference between the landlords. That's not that's for the landlords to work out with California Apartment Association. They're very well-paid lobbyists. For us, it's about staying housed. We are 52%. Our children go to the same schools as homeowners and landlords. We go to the same churches. We go to AYSO, we go to Little League, we support the same community events, we pay the same ridiculous sales tax, we pay the same utility tax, which by the way, makes our monthly expenses go up. And when the school district or the city floats out another one of these parcel taxes because they can't balance their budget here in City Hall, that gets passed on to us. So I'd like to know, landlords, you keep voting for these taxes and talking about, oh, these expenses, if we have to fix something. What the hell do we pay rent for if not for you to maintain your buildings? So we need this to stay in South Pasadena. We need this to stay housed anywhere because we know that in LA County, there was a 10% increase in the amount of homeless. And the reason that was given was because they could not afford their rents.
Hi, this is, I'm Ella Husag, and I'm here on behalf of Care First South Pasadena. I just want to lend support to what Ann was talking about. You know, I think we support the ordinance because it's not everything we wanted in this process, but it's very well balanced. And to the extent that it is not protective enough of tenants' rights, or it's overly protective and it disincentivizes renovations, you know, we can come back and we can fix it. But right now, I think we're losing affordable below market units at 10 times the rate that we are replacing them with new affordable units. The affordable housing is not being built at the rate that it needs to be to replace these units. So it's really, really critical that we at least make it, you know, a more difficult process to just summarily evict your tenant while you know, fix up the unit and then listed at double. Somebody mentioned that rent is doubled every single time they've had to move back in. That's not possible for, you know, the way that rents have gone up. We saw this in the housing element. There's some really great statistics, which I cannot recite off the top of my head, but rents in South Pasadena have gone up so much in the last 7 to 10 years, way, 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 way more than is reasonable, even setting aside, you know, all these other variables. So we need protections. It's not tenable to just leave it the way it is. We saw this. The reason we brought this to the city council and to staff was because Ann was getting calls. People were saying, I'm really concerned. I'm going to get evicted. And we have, you know, the housing element coming in, new zoning coming in. It's going to be easier than before to create, you know, to go in and create more dense developments. And that also is going to incentivize, you know, moving people out that are paying below market. So we need some protections. This is a really important moment for the city. And I really hope that our city council hears us and rises to the moment. And, you know, to the extent that it's not working, we're going to hear about that from the landlords. There's no way they're not going to complain. You're going to know. So we can always tinker with it if it's not balanced correctly, but we need something now.
Hello. Is this working? Is it working now? Okay, sorry, I'm tall, so. You know, we hear a lot about the economics of this ordinance and of housing in South Pasadena. I just want to give us like perspective for the renters because that's part of what we're dealing with is there's a lot of stress that goes into leaving your home. And without this ordinance, where we're at with the law is there's a way that landlords can remove people from their homes. I mean, we have tenants in this community that have been around living in their homes for 30, 40 years. And, you know, with under state law, like they can just be removed. They get 60 days notice. That's a lot of like adjustment and time to like, you know, figure things out. And even if they're not being removed, even if they're just we're just dealing with repairs, like even with the ordinance, the relocation assistance is only prorated month's rent times 2. And during the time that the renovations are happening, you still have to pay your rent. So like I have, you know, a budget for my housing costs, but all of this stuff could happen, you know, without my consent, without my power having, like the landlord can just tell me like, oh, we're gonna, you know, renovate, or oh, you're gonna need to be, you know, out of your apartment for a certain amount of time. And like even with the ordinance with the relocation assistance, like I can't, based on what my rent is, which is market rate, I couldn't even afford a hotel for that amount of time. Like if I have to be, you know, out for a renovation, like that's impacting like my work, that's impacting if people are in school. And it's just like a lot that, you know, when homeowners don't really have to deal with, and all of it is happening like without like the consent or agreement of the tenants. And I appreciate if there are landlords that you know, do work with their tenants and are very reasonable. I think that's great. I think everyone deserves that. And I think that's why we need laws to ensure that everyone gets that. Thank you.
We are now going to take a Zoom caller. The first one will be Marissa. Let me go ahead and unmute you. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marisa Gedney. Thank you so much for having me today. On the night of Tropical Storm Hillary, August 21st, the ceiling in my bedroom collapsed due to a severe leak in the bedroom, in addition to half the living room having sagging bubbles due to a leak. I had lived there for 5 years, and the building had not been maintained properly at all during that time. While the landlord did move on inspection, asbestos was found. So I am the tenant that Anne was just referring to, because I had to lean on her help really, really closely during this really time of extreme distress. So when asbestos was found and when it was being abated, the landlord told me several times that the unit was habitable, that I could still live there and work there, and that I would need to pay rent during that time. She also told me several times during that I should consider moving. So there was a lot of just those tactics, those like threats kind of happening when it was so clear that the unit was not habitable because of the half the bedroom was closed off, you know, had the plastic that said do not enter, hazardous. The whole front of the units had, you know, that it was closed off, said that it was hazardous, do not enter. But she was saying that I still needed to pay rent and still live there at that time. Then on September 11th, that's when I got the eviction notice due to remodeling. And she said that she wouldn't make any repairs to the unit until I left. So that was all very, that didn't make sense. And that was all a push out tactic, because the ceiling in the living room was completely gone. So there was no ceiling in the living room. Half the bedroom didn't have a ceiling and didn't have walls. So I had no choice but to move by the 30th, because if I had stayed, there's no way that I could even live there, but I would still have to be paying rent for October through November 11th, when the 60 days notice would have been over. So it was clearly uninhabitable, clearly a push out tactic. And I can't afford to stay in South Pasadena. So I moved out on September 30th and have to find a new place to live. So I am that case where, you know, a reliable, solid renter, where my life just kind of turned upside down really, really, really quickly due to not having the ordinance in place. And I do really believe that if the ordinance had been in place, I would have had more legal leverage to ensure that my landlord would honor the lease. This experience was so costly. We're talking like thousands of dollars, plus she still made me pay rent for September, even when I couldn't live there through the asbestos abatement. I had to miss work several days just to try to understand legally, like, you know, what were my rights? Because, you know, as just a kind of civilian. I didn't understand the ordinance, the laws, what was going on. And this is a mom and pop landlord. She has several units in the area, but she doesn't live in the area. And she was just very difficult to deal with, very unreasonable. She obviously didn't have regard for my health, for my safety, or displacement. Even when I saw her on the last day to turn in keys, she was sort of taunting me, like, "Are you still scared of asbestos?" And she yelled at me, she belittled me, she blamed me. Her emails were just very aggressive. She also used the tactic of just ignoring all communication. So even when I would ask her for documentation to see if it was safe to re-enter after the abatement, she just ignored me. And the abatement company wouldn't give me that because they said that only the landlord could give me that information. It was just, I don't have words even for just how awful this experience has been. And all I was asking her to do was to adhere to her lease, right? Which says if it's partially or fully uninhabitable, that I wouldn't have to pay rent. And just my right to be able to still live there after things are fixed. But clearly she wasn't moving forward on fixing it until I left with the eviction notice. So I do believe that this ordinance would have really helped me to not have such an extreme upheaval to my life, as many people have just mentioned, where I now have to find a new place to live, all within, under a month. Because I can't afford to pay the rent in South Pasadena. And I do believe that the ordinance would have helped with just the overwhelming amount of distress that has impacted me emotionally, physically, and mentally at this time. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to take a speaker in chambers before I go back to Zoom. Anybody? Okay.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hi. So I am definitely in this moment of fear of being evicted. And so due to substantial renovation, if this ordinance were to not pass. So I have been spending time pretty much each week just looking to see what apartments are available. So I find this conversation around deferred maintenance really interesting because my building definitely has deferred maintenance. And as I'm looking at other apartments that cost 2 or 3 times what I'm currently paying, it's very clear from looking at the photos that these apartments also have deferred maintenance. So it's not like there's this magic thing that happens when people move out or evicted and this incredible updating happens to apartments. So I would end up moving out of my apartment to live in very similar deferred maintenance situation and be paying 2 to 3 times that. And that also reminds me of the Zoom community meeting that I attended earlier this year regarding this issue. And I think the heart of what us as tenants are talking about is when a landlord representative spoke up and said at the end, if we can't evict tenants, how can we raise the rent? And I don't know if she meant to say this in that moment, but it was said. And I think that's really at the heart of what the landlords who really want to prevent this ordinance from being passed are advocating for. They want to be able to raise the rent and they want to avoid having to do real maintenance on their buildings. So I hope that the council does pass this ordinance, and this would be a great opportunity to affirm that commitment to affordable housing as the city has promised to the state. Thank you.
Okay, our next Zoom guest, Brian, go ahead and speak, and you'll have 3 minutes. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi. Okay. Thank you very much. I first would like to thank the city of South Pasadena for hosting these meetings. They are super helpful. They allow us to be heard, and they also allow us to speak up about our problems. The city is beautiful, and the city has really just shown me that the people here do care. I was also part of the meetings back in June and July where this topic was first brought up, and that was that was around the time when my building, which I also share in the same building as the first speaker. Hi there, Richard. We were also told, well, first we were physically harassed in person by our landlord, which was Helix Real Estate. They would send people to meet me and my father, who we rent just right up the street on Mount Avenue. Would tell us that we need to move, would start speaking to us about just money that they would give us, but that we would have no option in moving. And we asked them to please put that in writing, because we're not going to just accept anything by word. And then it just got worse from there. They decided to put things on our door. We got our first eviction notice for substantial remodeling, no fault, just cause. And then from what my dad has been hearing recently is that most, if not all, tenants in our building have been going through the same kind of threats, whether by phone or in person. So while I do understand this is a business, the continuing threats is not appreciated, especially in a time where it is very expensive to not only live in LA County, but South Pasadena as well. Just the stress that we had to go through these last few months was not okay, and it was hard for not just me and my father in our unit, but for
Our next speaker in chambers, go ahead and step up to the microphone.
Hello, my name is Deborah Lutz, and I'm a resident of South Pasadena and a housing provider. I've been participating in these community forums for the last many months, and it is really disheartening to hear of the threats of intimidation and harassment. It's not how things should go. I will say that I've had personal experience with that. Over the last many weeks, I have been cyberbullied and harassed by Ann Bagasso of the South Pasadena Tenants Union, posting my photo online so that you could all recognize me for the sheer purpose of intimidation in standing up for my views and my opinions on this process. She will continually post lies about my intent of supporting tenants' rights. I have participated in a lot of these community forums. I've met with Leah and participated in the housing provider forum. And I will tell you that landlords have not stated that they do not believe in tenants' rights. They believe in a balanced policy that needs to be sorted out. We all know sitting here that we're not only talking about substantial renovations. We're talking about a rental registry coming. We're talking about rent control, and we're talking about inspections. All of that needs to be taken into consideration. This process is complex. It's very nuanced. To make general statements on either side is disingenuous of coming to an agreement on what is fair for both sides. There needs to be compromise, but there also needs to be respect and stopping the intimidation, because if you want housing providers to participate in a meaningful discussion about this, they need to feel that they have the right to speak their mind and not be harassed and intimidated online with the intent to discredit them. So I welcome everybody to continue to participate in the discussion, but I would ask for respect on both sides. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker would be on Zoom, Jorge Rivera. When you are ready, go ahead and speak.
Oh, hi. Am I not able to come on camera? Okay. Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Jorge Rivera. I am the executive co-director of the Healing and Justice Center. We are tenant rights advocates and affordable housing advocates as well. We have a tenant counseling hotline that we provide to all of the San Gabriel Valley. And I am coming to you this morning, speaking to you as a representative of the organization, also as a small property owner and a real estate agent as well. I've been doing housing work and tenant rights advocacy for over 10 years, and much of what has already been spoken is stuff that I've already shared. And I'd like to just ask ask if it's okay if I take a second half of my comments to interpret in Spanish. I understand that there's some Spanish speakers, and in order to include them in the civic process.
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much to the city for just taking this into consideration and for doing this work to try to protect the 52% of the residents of South Pasadena. You know, allowing renovation-based evictions I think, sends a message that recuperating costs or money is more important than the people of the community that inhabit it. And I think if renovictions, as we refer to them, are allowed, I think it's important to consider that at the end of the day, the property owners are going to be made whole. And it's only fair that if tenants have to be displaced, or relocated because of renovations, that the tenants are too also going to be made whole, ensuring that they have another place to live, because otherwise we put them in a precarious situation. And also around this idea of the cost pass-through, it's like, yeah, it's very easy for a property owner to pass through the cost to the tenants, because the owner again is going to be made whole, but then now the tenants are having to deal with higher costs and more rent burden. So I think that this argument that it needs to be fair and balanced is a red herring type of argument, because it's already not fair and imbalanced. Property owners have way more power than tenants do, because they're the ones that own the property and they're the ones that dictate who gets to live there, how much they're going to charge, and tenants have absolutely no say. So if we're thinking about an equitable solution, then we cannot approach this in a fair and balanced manner, because it's already imbalanced. The tenants need to be taken into account, and there needs to be more protections on their side, or at least more involvement and say so on their side than the property owners do. And also, as it relates to this argument that this is a business and that property owners have to make repairs and maintenance and things like that. Well, as a realtor, I can tell you that when we help people purchase investment properties, maintenance and repairs are factored into the calculations. So we wouldn't bail out, or we wouldn't allow businesses to use, we have usury laws that don't allow businesses to charge outrageous fees just so that they can recuperate their costs. So why would we allow property owners to be able to do whatever they wish with their properties if in fact they are a business, right? If they are a business, then we should treat them as a business, and they should have the same responsibility as any business owner. Because a business owner that goes under, they go under because of their own ability to maintain the business, right? So if you're choosing to be in this business, if you want to see it as such, then you know what, you should be treated like any other business owner. I include myself in that as well, right? Being a small rental property owner.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
That does your 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll translate.
In Spanish?
Yeah, in Spanish. Hola, soy Jorge Rivera, director ejecutivo de la organización de Centro de Sanación y Justicia, Healing and Justice Center. Nosotros abogamos por los derechos de los inquilinos y para viviendas asequibles. Quería solamente dar mis comentarios alrededor de los desalojos basándose en las renovaciones. Si si la ciudad permite que la gente esté desalojada por renovaciones, es que está mandando el mensaje que el dinero y recuperando los costos de la renovación es más importante que la gente de la comunidad. Si nosotros permitimos que los desalojos basándose en las renovaciones son permitidos, los dueños van a recuperar sus gastos, pero los inquilinos van a tener va a estar más pesado para ellos con la renta y todos los otros gastos que sí les van a permitir que pasen los gastos a los inquilinos. Y si alrededor de este argumento que es un negocio, si es un negocio, como agente de bienes, cuando metemos a un inversionista comprando propiedades, siempre factoramos los costos para reparar y mantener la propiedad en la compra. Así es de que subiendo la renta y todo eso no debe de ser excusa para poder renovar y subir la renta, porque ya debe de estar factorado. Y si van a hacer el argumento que son negocios, deben de tratarlos como negocios. Y luego el argumento que necesitamos encontrar algo una ordenanza que esté balanceada, pues este no es el buen argumento porque ahorita la dinámica de poder no está balanceada. El dueño tiene mucho más poder que el inquilino ahorita. Así es de que no podemos tratar de crear una ordenanza que va a ser balanceada, porque el inquilino debe tener mucho más consideración en este aspecto. Y pues ahí voy a parar. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone in chamber who wishes to speak or give a comment? Okay, we have another Zoom caller. Okay, when you can, just go ahead and speak.
Great. Good morning, everyone in chambers and on Zoom. My name is Allison Henry. I am the co-founder of the San Gabriel Valley Tenants Alliance. I live in Pasadena. I'm also the lead organizer for LA Forward Institute, which is where I happen to read your housing element, which was referred to in previous comments. And I also happen to sit on the Pasadena Rental Housing Board as an at-large member. I'm not speaking in that capacity, but it's a lens I do bring to my overall knowledge of just renovations and regulations. And I would just echo all the comments specifically about, this being a business and businesses are regulated. And there's obviously been great outreach to the property owners and the housing providers because they're here making comment. It would be great to see more tenants here since you are a tenant majority city, but obviously tenants are here for this community meeting. So welcome everyone. I really just want to lift up the good governance part of what's on offer here in this ordinance. This is just regulation like any other businesses in the community. And a business that's in a unique position to have such a command on the housing stock. And we know that we're losing both people to homelessness and affordable housing to renovations, some of them not fully necessary. And we know that things slip through the cracks because the cities don't have enough capacity to do the type of code enforcement that maybe would even help with these deferred maintenance scenarios. So we know that we're at limited capacity all around. But I would just really urge the South Pasadena City Council, when they consider this, to pass this ordinance. Like Jorge Rivera had mentioned, these costs are factored in to several of these business transactions. That's really important to remember. And this is what local control looks like. Your housing element provides so much local data about your, again, tenant majority city and the particularly rising costs of rent in South Pasadena, but we know region-wide rents were always outpacing wages. So that actually sets the frame for the market. And we know that people are rent burdened and significantly rent burdened, which means 30 to 50% of your income on rent. So I encourage the South Pasadena City Council to step in the footsteps of, continue to step in the footsteps of good governance and support this ordinance when they're able to. Thank you for my comments.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anybody else have any questions that they would like to speak or comment on? No, we don't have any.
There are a lot of you here who haven't spoken. Thank you.
My name is Maria, and I just wanted to once again share the story of my 8-unit building on Huntington Drive. My unit was full of working families, children, and the owner, who does not reside in South Pasadena, she actually resides in Montecito, California. She pretty much evicted 7 of the families in this building with the pretext of major renovation. We were the only family that were left in the unit, probably because my husband acts as the key holder, but we were able to see all the units that were supposedly going to undergo major renovations, and there was no such thing. It was all paint. It was all very superficial. They got rid of the 7 families in the unit. There was a family with a disabled parent, families with children that attended the local schools. And it was just a pretext. There was no major renovation. And so once the units were, updated a little bit, the new rents that and we knew because my husband was charged with showing the apartments to the people who were interested in the apartments. The rents went up double, triple. I mean, we were so scared that we were also going to be asked to vacate. And we were just like, we are willing to live in this unit, which is very run down. It's old. There's nothing easy about this unit that we live in. The pipes are, old, the electricity, we have to be careful during the summer months, especially right now with the AC. We can't run too many things. We have to disconnect things because it trips the panel. So I have witnessed firsthand that many times the excuse of substantial renovation is not accurate. And I've seen it with my own eyes. And so people need to be truthful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know this is public comment, so I'm not technically a member of the public, but I just want to let you know that Councilmember Donovan and I, we are listening very carefully. Thank you for all those comments, important comments. It's helped us understand how you are walking in your shoes and what kinds of things are happening. I can't speak on behalf of the City Council, but we've had several meetings and council members have gone on record, and I think you can review those statements. And most of Jack and my comments will be provided at the City Council meeting. This is really just a time for us to listen. But I wanted to reassure you that every voice counts. I also want to reassure you that the predominant way we are learning is through these meetings. There's nothing going on behind the scenes. We may have occasional conversations, but we are learning through the ad hoc Zoom meetings that we have of two different ad hoc with multiple stakeholders, the community meetings we've had, the public comments that have come into City Council, the focus group meetings, which I think were very important, the surveys that have been provided, and this meeting. So we've had a very robust process. And the reason we do that is because we are a fiercely independent community. We don't just copy what another jurisdiction does. We don't just assume that those who speak on behalf of one side or another are exactly what we need to do. We want to make sure we listen to all sides. So I don't apologize for the outreach we've done. I ask you to consider that everything we've tried to do is balanced in terms of listening. And this has been extremely important to hear from you. And I thank everyone who's come out on a Saturday and given of your time. And like I said, Jack and my report will be provided at the council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If there are no further comments, oh, there is, come on up.
Hello, hate public speaking. It's been very interesting hearing all the comments today. It's also been very distressing. We moved to South Pasadena, my wife and I, 11 years ago when my daughter was about to be born and my son was about to start school, because we knew that the school system was great. And when we got here, we fell in love with the city. The people, just everything about it. It's this little slice of heaven in Los Angeles. I also live in the same building that the Zoom speaker Brian lives in, and I was unaware of the harassment that he was facing. It's terrifying. We were just offered just this last week money to move, money that would be insufficient for us to move, and if it's it's terrifying to think about that we might face that same type of harassment. My daughter is about to turn 11. She's never lived anywhere but South Pasadena. She loves it here. My son has gone to school from TK. He's just started high school this year. We want to stay in South Pasadena. We look at rents for other places in South Pasadena, and it's just we would be heartbroken to have to be uprooted and leave this community and leave this school system. I do have a great fear of what the previous speaker said, that there would be people would be without this ordinance being put into place, that this loopholes would be exploited, and that there would be necessary maintenance put into place, and that would be used as an excuse to evict us. So I do urge the city council to pass this ordinance. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I just moved here in July, and I live next to the building that caught fire, 1612 Huntington. So I just moved here because my son's father passed away in July as well. So we moved here because he's on the spectrum. So, he's getting really good services prior to where he was at before. I'm sorry, I'm not good at this. And personally, I work for LA County. I'm a social worker for DCFS. So I've seen my clients struggle with housing. My biggest fear is seeing, I don't know my neighbors from the other building, but I know one gentleman was sleeping in his car. And I felt so bad. I wanted to open the door, but I don't know who this person is. So I get it. Some of us are really good runners, some are not. But I guess just speaking from personal experience, just some of us are professionals, but we don't make enough to pay for rent, And I'm not gonna lie, I've gone to food banks to get food for him, because I pay more for rent than I do. So I want to stay here with him. He lost his father. So I'm trying to build him his own little community. So, but I guess for me, just feeling awful for the people across in 1612 where they had nowhere to go, and I'm seeing them take out their stuff. And I was approached by my landlord if I maybe thought about leaving, and I'm like, I just moved here in July, to basically pick up my life again and move. It would be very difficult. So I'm just from personal experience and stuff. Like I said, I'm new here, but I just hope there's I think Deborah said, there's some compromise halfway or something. That was it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm at 1313 Huntington. I have been given 2 eviction notices. Recently been offered money. Again, it's not sufficient enough. If I have to move, I would have to uproot my life. My son that attends PCC, he works in here in the community, and I would have to leave my job that I've been at for 15 years. So there's nowhere else I can live that I could afford. So please, city council, please take an account to us renters. Thank you.
Anyone else have something they'd like to say? First timer.
Hello.
Oh, someone on Zoom.
Yes.
Please share your name and off you go.
Sure. My name is Priscilla Zaragoza. I've lived in South Pasadena for 21 years. I went to middle school and high school here. This is my community. I'm currently a renter. I've been living in the same unit for 21 years. And we've had 3 different property owners within the past 3.5 years. One of our units here in our complex is currently empty. So our new landlords decided to remodel, and our current fear, all of the tenants here at 1601 1323 Oak Street, our fears are that we would be evicted once our landlord sees that he's able to remodel our units and bring in people who can afford to pay $2,700 a month for rent. It's really important that my family stays where we are. We can't afford to live anywhere else in California. And my son was just diagnosed with cancer in July. So we need to stay in California. He's getting his treatment here. Some of you may have seen me. I used to work at Starbucks. I used to serve you guys your coffee. Some of you serve me at your local food banks. And I live here in South Pasadena. I feel like I'm a part of your community. I try to share and give whenever I can. I love this community, and without this ordinance, it just makes it easier for landlords to uproot the members of our community that make it what it is. So I just ask that you please take into consideration the families that have been living here for many years, and would like to remain a part of this community. Thank you.
Anyone else on Zoom? Okay, I'm not sure. Hold on. Any other first-time commenters? No, we're good. Okay, Mr. Thurman has one final remark.
And this is really more of a public service announcement than either side of this. But remember, there is an existing ordinance in place right now. And some of the things that I've heard today sound like they would be in violation of that ordinance. So it's important, if your rights are violated, that you take advantage of the law that exists. The context of this discussion is making changes to the existing ordinance, but the existing ordinance has requirements that landlords have to meet for substantial renovations. And if those aren't being met, you should assert your rights. So I just wanted to make sure everyone's aware of that.
Okay, thank you so much. So we will conclude our public meeting with that. I want to thank everyone so much for coming out on a Saturday morning to share your experiences. I think, to echo the mayor, staff has learned so much from these listening sessions, and has really provided a lot of color and detail that you just don't get when you're looking at things through the policy lens exclusively. So thanks again for coming out. Please take a cookie on your way out, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.